Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. By now you all know me, but if not, my name's Mario. I put out videos primarily on clinical research, and this is going to be a clinical research video. And I am going to cover one of the more requested topics, and that is how to get your foot in the door into a clinical research position. This is a question that I get asked often. So I'll go over what I'm going to cover in this video. I'm going to cover three things. The first is how to identify a position in clinical research that may be of interest to you. The second thing is going to be a question that you should never ask. And I get this question a lot in the comments. So I just don't think it's a very good question. I don't think I can give you a helpful answer. I don't think anybody can give you a helpful answer. So I think you need to phrase that question differently, and I'll cover what that question is. And then finally, I'll talk about some positions that I think are good entry-level positions to target. So before I get started talking about all of that, I need to remind you all to please take a moment to smash that like button and to subscribe to my channel. The channel is now up to 600 subscribers, on the way to that 1,000 subscriber mark in hopefully the next month or so. So thank you all for your support, and let's get started with today's topic. So how do you identify a position in clinical research that may be a fit for you? I think the best way to do this is to hop onto the job sites and type in entry-level clinical research and see what comes up and read through the job descriptions. You may not understand them fully, but you will have some sense of what the job responsibilities are and if they may be of interest to you. For example, some jobs may say travel requirement is at 75%, and you may be sitting and thinking to yourself, well, I don't really want to travel. So, all right, that's not a good fit. Some jobs may say a ton of time is going to be spent on project timelines and following them to make sure that every milestone is completed. And if project management is not your strong suit, is not something that of particular interest to you, you can eliminate that. And you can go down these job descriptions. You're going to understand a lot of the basics of what the requirements are and what an everyday would look like in these positions. For example, if they say 75% travel, you know a lot of your day is going to be spent traveling. For timelines and an emphasis on project management, a lot of your emphasis is going to be making sure different milestones are met to some project goal. The other types of things you may see, vendor management, filing things in the trial master file, just depending on the role, you'll see all these different descriptions. And like I said, at the entry level, you may not understand what the descriptions are. However, you can always reach out to experienced people out there, myself or anybody with some clinical research background, and say, hey, this is a job that's of interest to me. I'm not fully sure if I'm qualified, but the job description sounds interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about what this position would entail? And also, maybe there's a tangential position that may be more appropriate for your level. So just so I cover the big job sites that I recommend, LinkedIn is, of course, going to be the go-to. Indeed, Career Builder, any of those would work. You can also probably hop onto Glassdoor and see what people say about that role at certain companies to get a sense of the pros, cons of the position and what it's like. So that's my way of going about telling people of how to find that clinical research position that's of interest to them. And this brings me straight into the next topic, which is the one question that you should never ask. And I get this question directly a lot. And in my opinion, I just can't give you a very good answer. So the question I get a lot is, what job in clinical research makes the most money? Now, the reason I can't give you a great answer is because I'm going to tell you that the job that makes the most money at most pharma companies, at most CROs, is going to be the CEO position. The CEO of J&J makes way more than me. The CEO of IQVIA makes way more than me. The CEO of Thermo Fisher makes way more than me. And I can continue to just list companies and tell you that the CEOs of all these big companies make way more than me. And then this is usually followed with, well, I've never worked a day in clinical research. I mean, coming in, what job makes the most money? And again, I just don't think there's a very good answer to this question because I need to know what you're interested in. So go to the job descriptions, read them. And a way better question is, these are jobs of interest to me. What has the best career path? That'll depend on person to person. Some people aspire to be the CEO one day. Some people aspire to retire and leave the workforce as early as possible. So your aspirations matter. Some people aspire to travel around the world or the country. Some people really just want to stay in their local neighborhood. So it really depends on you, but just asking outright what position makes the most money, you're not going to get a meaningful answer. I see that question a ton. Actually, a tangential question that's actually better is what jobs in clinical research don't require that much travel? I get that question a lot, and I actually think that's a good question. That's something to consider a lot before jumping into clinical research, because in my opinion, I feel getting 1 year of field monitoring clinical research experience somewhere on your resume is useful. So if you're willing to travel for 1 year, it's a useful skill set to have. And then you can move on to different things. You can bypass this and go around this, but in my opinion, I've worked with many people, and I find people that have been a field monitor, even if it was for a year, have a much better understanding of the day-to-day of what the life of the monitors are like. Project managers that haven't had that experience sometimes don't really fully understand why they're not getting emails responded to within 10 minutes. Well, I'm on a plane, the flight's 3 hours, you're not getting any emails from me. My recommendation is, if you're willing to consider that in your career growth, being a clinical research associate and really a field monitor is something that's good to have in your background, and you don't need to do it for a very long time. But that was an aside. So let me cover some of the positions that I think that someone at the entry level should consider in clinical research. So let me start with clinical research coordinator, and this is what I did. So a clinical research coordinator works at usually a hospital or clinic or that kind of a setting, and they are responsible for overseeing trials from the site side. So what does that mean? It means, as a clinical research coordinator, you're going to be working with different pharma companies, biotech companies, et cetera, that are running trials at your site. And you're going to be responsible for often things like consenting patients, looking through the schedule of events and making sure different uh, parameters or things are met. For example, blood draws, et cetera, that are done as per protocol. The other things that this may entail is data entry, and entering all the data that is required for the trial, managing regulatory documents. This is a great position because it gives you exposure to a lot of things on how to run a trial at the site level. As you grow in your career, you're going to want to see it from the other side and how to run a trial from the pharma company's perspective, but this is a good entry level position. And when you're looking for these positions, what you really want to look for, if you're truly entry level, is going to be clinical research coordinator 1 positions. If there's a designation of 1 after the position, that means it's truly entry level. On occasion, you may see these job descriptions saying 6 months of experience required. But the job is going to be entry level, and they consider people with no experience. Oftentimes, you'll find people that have graduated college with a background in biology, psychology, chemistry, gravitate toward these positions, but technically there's no real requirement. You're going to be able to learn most of what you need on the job. That said, if you have a background where you can understand biology and medicine relatively easily, the job will be easier for you, but it is not a prerequisite. So clinical research coordinator is a fantastic job to start. Now, I will preface this that since I talked about money a second ago, clinical research coordinator jobs tend to be fairly low paying, especially at the entry level. It's not unheard of for these jobs in the United States at academic sites to pay 30 to 40K, which is pretty low if you're making 30 to 40K and living somewhere like New York City. So the pay is not going to be great. Now, the experience, on the other hand, is fantastic to have. So you're going to start low pay, but you can work your way into the pharmaceutical world and start building up your credentials and also your salary, and figure out what you're interested in. The good thing about the site level is you'll be exposed to regulatory, hopefully, data entry. You'll be exposed to the overall trying to follow schedule events and protocols. So you can decide what aspect is most interesting to you. Or do you want to be trying to grow your career in regulatory affairs? Do you want to try to grow your career in data management? Do you want to try to grow your career in clinical research and field monitoring? So at that point, you'll have an understanding of what the jobs entail, because in the clinical research coordinator role, you'll have some familiarity with all these different areas. The next position you could consider straight out of college or at the entry level is going to be the clinical trials associate, or CTA position. A clinical trial associate would work at a pharma company or at a clinical research organization. Um, and their tasks can vary quite a bit, but at the end of the day, it's an entry level position that often provides support in different ways for the clinical research team. So this may include things like filing documents into a trial master file. It may include things like pushing documents through the legal process, pushing contracts and budgets through. It can vary quite a bit on the exact specifics on the position, depending on where you're working. But this is also a great position to get exposure to clinical research. And if your goal is project management and becoming a clinical trial manager or something of that nature without having to go through the travel of working your way first into a clinical research associate role, and you're pretty dead set that you never want to travel, getting from a clinical trials associate, you can possibly become an assistant project manager and work your way into project management. That is an option. So if you're really dead set on, oh, project management's the thing I want to do long term, I would gravitate a little more toward the clinical trials associate role than the clinical research coordinator role. Another role that is oftentimes at the entry level is going to be something called an in-house clinical research associate. You'll see different levels required for in-house clinical research associates. Sometimes they want very experienced people, but some of the positions will be toward the entry level. And a clinical research associate in-house can do a wide variety of things, but oftentimes it's going to be along the lines of manage the vendors, possibly do trip report review for your field monitors. It could also entail ensuring different timelines are met for the project. So project timelines, and make sure that everything is being met according to plan. It could also include different aspects of trying to oversee various parts of the trial. For example, say you monitor in the field reports a problematic site. You may be asked as the in-house CRA to contact the site and work with the site to try to fix some of the problems that can be done remotely. So that is what an in-house clinical research associate does. That is, like I said, at times entry level. The position that is not entry level and will require some experience before you get it is the clinical research associate, the field monitoring, the one where you go out and travel to sites. I have a lot of people reach out and basically often tell me, because of all their degrees, they're qualified to be a clinical research associate. So I will say this: when I have reviewed resumes, I look for coordinator experience, I look for clinical trials associate experience, I look for in-house CRA experience. I do not really care that much about what your degree is in. I want to know that you know clinical research. So if you got an MD, PhD, PharmD, and are an NP, it's irrelevant to me if you don't have the clinical research background. So my advice is just get out of that mindset where I'm just going to skip steps because I have certain education. The slight exception to that rule will be some CROs on occasion do have like a 6-month program where they will put in people with certain degrees to just teach them clinical research. These are kind of the equivalent to bridge programs. And I've seen some nurses come out of those programs, and going through the program, they learned the clinical research aspect. So that is what I feel like is really, really important for trying to grow your career in clinical research. Have that foundation. And I will end this just talking about money. So a lot of these entry level positions won't pay that well, but do it for a year, gain that knowledge, and then target what you want that may pay better or be something you're more interested in. Trying to jump is not always great, and this is going to be a story that I've heard that may be relatively public knowledge at this point, but I'm going to share it in this video. So there was a CRO that hired a whole bunch of people that talked about their extensive clinical research knowledge, except these people didn't have any clinical research knowledge. So they came into the job, and it turns out they had this grand, elaborate scheme where they created fake references, created fake backgrounds, etc., and they were able to get hired. And as they started going on the field, there started to be questions about the monitoring team. They're like, these people don't really know anything about clinical research, and it's weird. They had references that checked out great, etc. So what's going on here? And this CRO, which will remain nameless, had to fire all these people. And you will be picked out very quickly in this industry as a fraud. It is very, very, very difficult to fake clinical research experience. I know this because someone came out on the field with me as an experienced clinical research associate. And I assumed that they were experienced because I said, hey, can you pick up the regulatory binder and do reg review? And I saw the person look a little confused, and I was like, okay, that's pretty basic. You can look through a regulatory binder. Like, if you've been a coordinator for one day, you probably know what a regulatory binder is. And then I said, just to test this person, because I started questioning it, can you hand me a copy of the 1572? And I was shocked by the response I got, which for an entry-level CRA would probably have been fine, but this person, like I said, was experienced, supposedly. And the question I got back is, what's a 1572? And I'm like, well, and then I was completely speechless. I was like, well, you're supposed to be an experienced clinical research associate, and you're asking me what these basic documents are. If you don't know what a 1572 is, a delegation log is, etc., you probably should not be coming out as a co-monitor uh, as someone stating to have a lot of experience, because you're going to be pretty much found out immediately. And I reported that up the chain and said, look, we need to look into the background of this person and figure out why they were hired and if they should be fired. The reason for this is I feel like lying on your resume is terrible practice. Lying to have experience is terrible practice. And if lying in a job such as clinical research, where ethics are supposed to be at the forefront, is something you think is acceptable, you should never work in clinical research, in my opinion, in your entire life. And I kind of wish we had a ban. I know CROs internally keep lists of people that they would never hire again, but I wish those were shared industry-wide, because I think it's really important to do a really good job, to be ethical on what you do, not to lie to get positions. And if you're found out, your career is going to be over. Pretty much, uh, it's a small world in clinical research out there, so just don't do that. That's a very bad precedent. So that's going to be how I'll end this video, just telling you that now you should know how to find a position of interest to you. The question not to ask directly, what position makes the most money, without some context of these are positions I'm interested in, and some of the positions that you can apply to. So clinical research coordinator, clinical trials associate, in-house CRA. There are going to be others as well. There are hundreds of positions in pharma and at CROs. So those are just my top 3 for entry-level positions in clinical research, but there may be other things that are of more interest to you. You could be interested in recruitment manager and trying to recruit for trials, or like I said, there are just so many of them. I won't cover all of them in detail, and I don't think I could cover all of them. I can just keep going on and on and on. All right, so I am going to remind you again, if you have made it this far and you haven't done so already, please smash that like button, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.